This is Tom Gamble, the founder and organizer of the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown, presented by Mercy Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Meijer. Got to pay the bills, right? So we got to get that done. It's my extreme pleasure to welcome in the guy who loves high school football, who loves all football, who you see on various mediums. You can't honestly turn on the TV without seeing this guy. Kirk Herbstreit, I appreciate you taking the time. We're here at Indian Hill High School, so they were kind enough to let us use this as their, I think this is their boardroom, but this won't, we'll just talk football.
By the way, how do they do in football? How do they as a high school football?
Well, John Rodenberg is their coach.
Okay.
So very, very well. Now, do you know, and this is a little bit of trivia for you. I believe John Rodenberg is the only coach to win state championships in Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana.
Oh, my God.
He did. He won a couple at Moeller.
Wow.
He went to 2013 and 2014, I believe. Then he won at Covenant Catholic.
Incredible.
I think he's the only one.
When did he get here?
This would be year 3.
Okay.
Second or third year. I lose track after a while.
Yeah.
But I'm going to test your memory first and foremost. Because I remember back when we could have the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown at Nippert Stadium, which the NCAA won.
I love those days, man.
But I remember getting a call on the radio, and the person was working the gate, and they said, "Hey, there's a guy down here. It says Kirk Herbstreit wants to talk to the guy who runs the event." And of course, I go, "Okay, where are you? I'll be right down." And of course, I turned the radio and I said to the person I'm with, "Yeah, okay, here we go. Kirk Herbstreit's here, right?"
Yeah.
And this is before you became big time like you are now, right? But it was you.
It
was you. You were kind of incognito. I remember you had a hat on. You just wanted to hang out and watch the game.
Yeah.
And that kind of explains your love, because I know you love football. You obviously played at Centerville, Ohio State. But what is it about high school football that's always kind of been the draw for you?
Well, I grew up in Trotwood when I was little, and they had some good players and good teams. And like a lot of kids in Ohio, you got to remember this is in the 70s. I used to go to a high school football game, and I would watch those guys play. They would play Meadowdale. Had a big guy named Irv Eatman who went on to UCLA and played in the NFL forever. I remember seeing Irv Eatman in a Meadowdale uniform, and I was just something that just grabbed me because I loved football. Really, college football was like my first love. And I loved high school football. And I think it was going to those games in Trotwood. And then as I got older and my parents divorced, I kind of moved around from Trotwood to Centerville. And then I was in Franklin and watched high school football in Franklin and saw some great teams. And then I went to Wyoming. And my dad would take me in about 7th or 8th grade to your games. And I remember watching a game that's like vivid in my memory is Princeton against Moeller over at Galbraith Stadium over at Kings Island. And I think this was like 83 in a playoff game. Yeah. And maybe Vada Murray was on that team. Vada Murray. And Harlan Barnett made a huge play in that game. And great quarterback play. It was a kid that went to Michigan. Michael Taylor, I think.
Michael Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, and Dewan Francisco. And I'm sitting there watching this, sold out, and I'm looking at this. It felt like there were 100,000 people in that stadium and watch Prince. And I was just watching the game with my dad. I didn't care who won, but just to watch the energy and even the bands at night, it was just something that just has always grabbed me. I just love high school football.
What's funny, we didn't even plan this, but our opening game in the Skyline Crosstown Showdown this year is Moeller Princeton.
That's awesome.
So it's at Princeton, and they haven't played in the regular. They played 3 years ago in the postseason, but they have not played since 2008 in the showdown when Princeton led by 3. Yeah, they got it, and they did it on their own. They're playing. Awesome. They signed a long-term deal. But I think you brought up something. I mean, people don't realize in Cincinnati, when they took one Division I team, I guess it was Class AAA at the time before they went to Division. It came down to Week 10 regular season game. Moeller Princeton at Nippert. And you're right. You just hit on. I mean, just think of the names you threw out there. It's incredible. And I think that's been the thing about Cincinnati. We'll get to what you did. It's now kind of morphed into what ESPN does. Because you always thought Ohio, you obviously played here, but you saw it too. You always had that special feeling, right?
I did.
That Ohio, because I mean, look, Florida, Texas is huge, California, we get all that. They produce all these blue chip guys every year. But I think Ohio programs, and they proved it, can stand up to those
I've
teams.
talked with so many coaches, and think about, by the way, the coaches that have grown up and played high school football that have gone on and from the state, gone on to do great things in college football and even the NFL. But I've always talked to coaches, and the one thing they always talk about, yeah, you can go to California, you can go to Texas and Florida, and even Georgia now has become
Sure.
great, Louisiana, and there's tremendous athletes. But historically, the fundamentals, the coaching, the tradition, the energy of a Friday night game, it really is second to none. And I've always really taken a lot of pride in that as a guy who grew up in this state, talked to a lot of guys, been around this game. It's all I ever really do is football. And I still like to think that Ohio high school football, and I don't mean just the top 2 or 3 teams. I'm talking top to bottom.
Yeah.
I just think that the coaches, you know how they work at it. They go to clinics. They take so much pride in what they do with their culture, what they demand from these kids. I just think, especially in the world we live in today, there's so much craziness going around. Yeah. How much you can learn from just being on a high school football team.
I would agree.
Whether you're a starter or you're not. You learn about hard work, you learn about sacrifice, you learn about perseverance, fighting through the adversity. So many things that apply to real life. You and I were talking about, I have 4 sons and they all played high school football, and I love that they went through stuff. I love that they had to grind, and it really has helped them to develop them into the people that they are today. And that's why I'm a champion for high school football, not just in the state of Ohio, but all over the entire country.
Now, I know you also had a chance to find out how easy it is to run an event like this, right? When you decided to start.
Oh, my God.
Because your premise really was Ohio versus the USA. You were behind it with your name.
Yeah.
But it was so easy that you said, maybe, But I mean,
how many years is this for you?
This is 27.
Yeah. I mean, you deserve all the credit, you and your team, and what you guys have done. To be able to withstand the challenges. I mean,
there's a lot of them. Yeah.
Not just the logistics. For us, it was the financial challenges of trying to fly people in.
Which is different. Ours remaining local. We've done some regional games. I've had some ESPN games, but you're right. It's one of the funny things when you start
just getting buses, and hotels and all those kind of things. But I just love how much you love high school football, and it's, I think, as Ohio, especially Southwest Ohio high school football fans, thank God there are people like you that try to, because it's not the same as it used to be.
It's not, it's changed.
20 years ago. So thank God you keep feeding energy into it and reminding people. You start getting your blood going a little bit. You get to August, you get to mid-August, and it's like we're almost to that point. But yeah, it was cool to get it started. I think ESPN now, if you go to Labor Day weekend this year, you'll see Ohio versus Florida. You'll see Florida versus Texas. I mean, they have all these games, but it kind of started with our event.
It's interesting. You brought up something. It's changed. Why do you think high school football? And I think talking to athletic directors, et cetera, it's harder to get kids and students sometimes to attend, not just football, but other. Why do you think? I mean, and you hear there's more to do today and this and that, but why do you think that is? Why has it changed high school football so much?
I mean, you and I were talking a little earlier, and these phones, I think it almost, to me, it's not just phones. Phones and apps and things that these kids are occupied on are obvious. Video games. There's just so many things that I think a bigger issue for me when I played high school football in the late 80s, whether you're on the team or not, there was a sense of pride within the community. If Centerville played a game, our student section, there was pride within that student section, no matter who we were playing and where we were playing. They wanted to be there. I think you still see it.
There are pockets. There are some schools.
To me, back in that era, it was pretty much everywhere you went.
I would agree.
And I don't feel that community pride, and I don't know how we get back to that. I don't know if we ever can. But I feel like a big part of the reason we moved, my son Chase, from Nashville, where 3 of my sons went to Montgomery Bell Academy.
Right, which is a good program.
Great program. Yeah, they do a really nice job. It's an all-boys school down there, been around for over 100 years. Really good academics. And we decided to move Chase up, our last son, up to go to St. X. And a lot of that had to do with, he was our last guy. Our middle son was going to go to Ohio State. And we thought it was a good time to move him up. And because of my background in Ohio, I thought quickly of St. X and the respect I have for Steve Specht and the culture and the program and everything that school has to offer. But a lot of it had to do with that sense of community and that sense of pride that St. X and Moeller and Elder and everybody has. So we basically moved here to try to find what you and I are talking about, because I still feel it is alive. It is active. When you go to the pit and you're St. X, which the Bombers this year go into the pit.
Yeah, they do.
And it is incredible. Like you want to just, I'm thinking of bringing, sometimes I bring, because I fly back to the games, and I bring Pat McAfee back occasionally.
He went to a game last year,
He went to LaSalle a couple years ago.
Okay.
And I'm telling him already, hey, that game, they play Moeller the week before. So I'm going to try to go back-to-back weeks. But anyway, I'm going to bring Nick Saban, who's going to be on College Game Day now this year too. I'd like to bring him back because I want people to see, these atmospheres. And I'm, again, going back to the pride that I have, I think it's really cool to bring Nick Saban, who's been everywhere, in on a Friday night to see St. X and Elder.
Can you get him to smile?
Oh, yeah. He's a great guy.
So let me ask you this, because you do a lot of obvious college football, big college. I'm a big college football fan too. I don't think there's, outside of the Friday night high school, there's nothing like that Saturday experience on campus. But how much has the transfer portal and the mentality of, well, I didn't play, so I'm done. I'm going to go from here to there.
Yeah.
And just the quick, because you can't, that pains me about college football. You need a roster now every year.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of that trickles down to high school, where kids and parents are more, unfortunately in many cases, helicoptering over and saying, well, my son should be playing, but he's not, so we're going here.
Yeah.
Is that a part of it too, do you think?
Yeah.
Does that trickle down to
Yeah, I feel that's happening now in high school football. And I think, again, going back to our era, maybe you were growing up in the Pee Wee team and the middle school team, and all of a sudden you're on the 9th grade team and you're working your way up and you're excited about it. Whereas now, you have a lot of open enrollment and kids are kind of popping from here to there to there.
Open enrollment's
changed the game. It changed the game. So if you don't have a good situation or you look at it and you try it and it's like, didn't work out. A lot of parents today are saying, especially quarterback parents, they're out here, they're going over here. If that one doesn't work, we'll go over here. It's bizarre. And it makes it, to me, it's that you played and you lived in your community. And you're right. Like, I'm Cole Rain. There was the little car. Yeah,
you went up through, and it's just, sadly, it's not that way anymore.
Yeah.
But we're not going to change the world.
But I think by doing that, what happened was the little cards and up to middle school, you played against whoever, you played in that area, whoever your league was. And there was a sense of, man, they beat us in 7th grade. You know what I mean? There was history and tradition. And it's like, and all of a sudden you played them in 9th grade and you played them on the JV and then you into high school. And it was just layers of it, Now
your kid would have never been a little card because triple option, he wouldn't have been able to drop back and pass, right? I mean, so you did
a triple option.
You did it today. You have to make a
different deal.
Like
different
that.
Deal.
So I do want to ask you, college football. I mean, you've been such a part of ESPN's College Game Day experience, and I got it. It is one of the coolest, one of the most fun. I haven't been. I know they came to the University of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
But some of those atmospheres, when they show the aerial, it's
insane.
And I know people have tried on Friday nights. They're like, now, we need to do this at the high school. I'm like, no, it's different.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a variable that you can't have on high school.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have on the majority of high school campuses. But how amazed, even through all these years, are you still at some of those sites where you look at? You have to just be like, this is insane.
There's probably 15,000 people. It's just a sea of humanity, and it's just.
Are there a top 3 that just come to mind? The ones that just
there's so many. It's so hard to think about that. But I think people ask me, why is that? Because I've been on. This is my 29th year on the show, which is amazing.
That's crazy.
I feel like it's my 8th year, but it's 29 years. And what's interesting is when I started on the show, we'd have a few hundred people around the set. And as the show evolved, and Frank Beamer at Virginia Tech, he was just building up the Hokies program. And he was the first coach to realize the impact that our show can have. And he turned it into an infomercial and a recruiting opportunity. He had Michael Vick, who no one really knew at that time. And he knew who he was. And Michael Vick went on to become Michael Vick, but he embraced our show. He challenged his fan base, and we had 25,000 people in Lane Stadium for the first time, a crowd. And from that point on, it's been what it's become. And I think we never take credit for it. I think we do a good job on our show. It's college football. If we did this for college basketball or the NFL or the NBA or MLB, we wouldn't get this. It's the college football
You're right.
fan bases. It's the communities that we go into. We went to Fargo, North Dakota, North Dakota State.
Incredible.
I mean, in the middle of downtown,
the whole town
was there. I mean, it was every direction or everywhere you go. There are times you go to South Bend, because we haven't been there a lot.
Right.
So you go to Notre Dame. It's just such a monumental feel when you're there with the history of being in South Bend. So many great SEC places.
Yeah.
Of course, going to Ohio State for me personally is always special. But I feel like the places we don't go that often is where you get 20,000 people.
Well, to be honest with you,
up.
it's the same thing with the Crosstown Showdown. A lot of times when you have a game or a team or a host school that doesn't get it every year, they go crazy.
Yeah,
because it's and I think the event, while we try to keep the promotions it's become, you want to be in it because it signifies that your program is among the special programs in the area.
Absolutely.
So we have the Cincinnati games. We go over to Northern Kentucky, Southeast Indiana, East
awesome.
Central, which has won back-to-back state championships. By the way,
great.
Virginia Tech has the best entry, the Metallica entry. To me, that's one of the coolest.
The problem is, the last few years, that's the highlight of the game for the Hokies.
I know. No, that is very
because you're right. I mean, I'm calling the game and I'm bouncing. I'm like,
it's crazy.
And then all of a sudden it's not going. Now they're going to be better this year. They got a chance to be a lot better. That's a great fan base. I mean,
I got a college football for you. You love it so much. You're almost 3 decades into this. Do you like the changes? Are you bothered? I mean, I know you got to.
Yeah. I'm real.
But do you? But I mean, I don't know. For me personally, I'll always love college football. Man, oh man, it's getting harder to like with all the NIL.
Tom, it'd be one thing if one thing changed. Yeah. It's all at once. I was talking to Coach Saban. It's like there have been more changes in the last 2 or 3 years than there were the previous 150 years.
Think
about that.
That's nuts.
And it's not just NIL and portal, which get a lot of the attention.
Right.
It's realignment. Like what league is SMU in this year?
Hang on, I saw you just did something on this on ESPN. They're in the Big 12.
Yeah, they're the ACC. With Cal and Stanford.
Okay,
That's my point. Is the realignment. We have Oregon and Washington.
It's crazy.
They're in the Big 10.
I know.
And Texas and Oklahoma, they're now in the. So it's like the Pac-12's gone. See you later. I mean, the Pac-12. I love the Pac-12. Yeah, I love the Pac-12. It used to be the Pac-10, and they're gone. And so there's so much going on. We have a 12-team playoff that's going to start this year. So I'm a traditionalist. It just happens to be. It's just the way I am. But I've learned, because of the way of the world, you don't have to agree with everything. But if you're going to sit there and be pissed off and just sit there and be like, well, it's not the way it used to be, I can't do that. Right. I have to be open-minded. I have to be a guy that's willing to, let me try to understand NIL. My first reaction is like, I'm okay with, name, image, and likeness.
I don't have any issue with that either.
No. You know what that, for fans, what that means, name, image, and likeness means if a quarterback at Cincinnati becomes a high-profile game, or Corleone, the big defensive lineman, and he can get something with Skyline, or he can get something with La Rosa's or whatever. Sorry if I'm throwing.
No, that's okay.
But if he can get something locally with a company and make a few 10,000, 20,000, 100, I don't care, $1 million, whatever it is, that's off his name, image, and likeness.
Sure.
Great. But if Ohio State needs a left guard, and they're going to go down to Cincinnati or Miami, Ohio, who have a freshman All-American, and they're going to go say, hey, come, great year last year. You had a hell of a year. We need you up here, and we're going to give you what X amount of dollars.
That bothers you?
That drives me crazy. Yeah. Or if you're going to go to a high school recruit and entice him and make him come to your school and bribe him for pay for play, that's not NIL.
Well, how do you think I feel?
That's terrible.
So I was told years ago, you cannot host, because I'm a third-party vendor, if you will. I'm not a school. You can't host this at on a BCS campus.
Yeah.
And I understand, I guess, the alleged impropriety that a coach could come to me and say, hey, we're recruiting 5 kids from this school. Can you bring them in?
Yeah.
I can assure you that never happened.
Right.
But now, because I called last year and I said, I called a compliance.
Now that the world,
and I said, hey, now that the world of college athletics, the landscape changed, can we? And they said, no, the bylaw is still the same.
Wow,
it's crazy.
How about that? There are no rules.
Like no rules, except this rule, except this bylaw.
Keep him out of the
right. No,
I'm telling you, there are no rules right now. That's the thing. You asked me what drives me crazy.
Well, there's this rule, just so you know. There's the bylaw.
Yeah, but I'm just saying when it comes to recruiting,
right? Crazy.
And when you couldn't buy in the old days, 3 years ago, you couldn't buy a kid a cheeseburger.
Right. Oh no.
And now, do whatever the heck you want to do.
Crazy.
That is tough to deal with. So the realignment, again, get my arms around.
Right.
NIL. I'm every time I talk publicly, I say I don't like pay for play. I don't like taking players away from smaller schools. I don't like bribing high school players. I hate it. I hate these, these universities now. They have all these, what are they? The group of alums that get together, collectives.
Yeah.
The collectives, and they let's say they build $14 million, and then the collective is going to talk to the coaches about who we need to go recruit. That's insane
what are we
to me.
Doing here?
And the coaches, if they don't play ball, they're going to get left behind. They have to do it, or they're going to get killed.
Correct.
So they got to do it. And there's not a coach I've met, and I talked to every one of them. It's like, this is great for the sport.
I can't imagine.
Now, again, the NIL they have no problem with as far as if a guy can make some money off of his name, image, and likeness. But the bribing kids that's got to go. But overall, you still turn on a game on a Saturday.
As much as I complain about it, I'll have it on every Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's still those uniforms. It's still
college football.
It's still the marching bands. It's still the student sections.
So I want to ask you about your son Chase at St. X, but first I want to ask you one more college football thing. I know yesterday was a birthday.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I watching you and Lee Corso is really he really has a special place for you, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, and I got to say you can genuinely you see that on College Game Day. I see it's almost like somebody said it's like Kirk's Lee's caretaker, kind of on the set and stuff.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that relationship?
Well,
what does he mean to you?
Well, first, again, I'm a product of my dad was a coach.
Right.
It's funny. A quick story. When I started on the show in 1996, I replaced a guy, Craig James. Craig James and Lee Corso had a very different chemistry. It was more combative and fun and loud. And Craig went, "You're all crazy, old man." And so I start right after that. And Craig was a star in the industry. And I was more deferential. I'd call him coach. And I got done that year, and a producer pulled me aside and was like, "Man, you're not going to last if you don't start going after him." Because Lee, back in that era, was very abrasive.
I remember.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Said stuff no one else said.
Yeah, right.
And I showed him respect because he was a coach. And my dad, it's Bob Gregg. That's all I knew was respect the coach. And I was like, well, you guys, maybe I'm the wrong guy. This is my first year because I'm not changing. I can't be Craig James. And here we are 29 years later, and I've done it my way. Lee, when he had a stroke about 12 or 13 years ago, he went from my guy and just like the guy that I'm asking questions, and I'm talking about life, having twins prematurely, being married, going through challenges in life. I mean, he listened better than anybody in my life. And those conversations created a bond. And it wasn't just TV and it wasn't just football, it was life. And so you do that year after year with somebody, you get really, really tight.
Well, you can tell. I mean,
and so when he went through his stroke, I was like, oh my gosh, he had to learn how to talk again.
Yeah. So
people see him now these last, 5 or 7 years, and he struggles to get words out, and they're thinking, oh, he's so old. It's like, you'd be shocked. If he didn't have that stroke, he turned 89 the other day. If he didn't have that stroke, you would be blown away. It must be his Italian genes. He moves around like you'd think he's 60. And he speaks, other than his cognitive thinking is great.
Right.
It's just he tries to memorize a lot of his comments. And when you memorize anybody,
that's tough.
You try to memorize something, it's very tough. And he gets stuck on a word. And I just try to, if he does, I'm not like, oh, timeout. Like I try to do it just as soft and as quiet as I can, where it doesn't look like I'm trying to help him. But he's my guy. Like he's like another dad to me. I'll do anything for him. And we have Nick Saban now on the show. We got Pat McAfee on the show. We got Dez is still, Reese Davis, myself, and Lee is still on the show.
It's an enjoyable. I mean, McAfee putting on those ridiculous overalls and jumping in the tent.
Yeah, I mean, you know what?
He's added kind of because he brings a different audience to the table. Naturally.
Yeah, and I think for our show, number one, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We're self-deprecating, and we don't make it about us. A lot of the shows you watch right now,
Yeah,
it's about what can I say to get on social media and to go viral. We don't do that. We try to make it about the players. We try to make it about the coaches. We try to make it about the storylines.
Yeah.
Now we have fun and we'll also get really serious and do XO. It's just kind of like a mixed bag of 3 hours of tailgating to get you ready for a
and
for
you
a
get
Saturday.
to eat some good food. Too.
Yeah.
I notice I'm like, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish I was there.
Yeah.
But, so tell me now, what is it like? So obviously your son Chase at St. X, senior, your quarterback. You love high school football, but how different is it when you're watching?
Oh my!
I mean, it's
God.
now, can you sit in the stands? Do you have to walk around? Because everybody has different theories.
Well, this is my fourth son. I had a son, identical twins. One was a receiver, one was a corner, and the corner was hard because they played a ton of man, and he was on islands against guys down in Tennessee. They were going to LSU and Tennessee, and he's out there on an island. So that was terrifying and fun at the same time. Then I had a tight end that it was fun to watch, but it wasn't scary. And then you get this quarterback. Oh my God! It's one thing to play. You got the ball in your hands. You're playing. But as any parent knows when you watch, whether your son's a pitcher or your son's probably a goalie in hockey or a quarterback, it's like, you're just hoping for the best. The cool thing about Chase is his temperament allows me to stay a little bit calmer, but just your competitive streak. And the St. X parents are so cool, so good to my wife and I. We just try to blend in. We just try to be, I'm Kirk, this is Allie. And
what's interesting, because I asked, and I'm friends with Steve Specht, obviously, and I asked Steve, I said, hey, does Kirk come, because I wanted to try and hook up like this and get your thoughts on football. And I said, does Kirk ever come around practice? And he said, not at all. He said, he lets Chase be a kid. And I thought, no, that's commendable. Because, you hear, obviously, people know who you are. Let's not kid ourselves. So you could come around. You could stand and watch. And,
I've never done that. I never will. My kids' journey is their journey. Now, at home, I'm putting my arm around them, and I'm encouraging them, and I'm loving on them. But, man, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to put the coach in that position. I don't want to put myself in that position. I'm very quiet. I'm kind of an introvert. So when I get in social settings, because St. X does a big tailgate thing, and I don't.
I'm not going to see you walking around the tailgate.
I do. A buddy of mine has a camper, and so I just kind of set up camp in the camper. And,
gotcha.
Okay, and but I just like to just be a regular guy. And now I'm leaving College Game Day because I go there on Friday. I call Amazon Game on Thursday night on NFL. I'm with Al, and then I fly. He's always curious, what's your schedule? And I fly to game day on Friday. I do all my work and meetings and tape some segments. And then about 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I fly to wherever St. X is. It could be anywhere. They've been on the road a lot, last few years.
Back to game day.
And then I watch the show. I watch the game. Stomach is knots. It's the craziest thing I do all week. And forget about talking in front of millions of people. And then I go on the field, win or lose, and I hug my son. And sometimes it's tough, and sometimes it's awesome, and I leave, which is hard to do sometimes, and I go get on a plane and I fly back to College Game Day. And
now this is going to seem like a ridiculous question. Do you ever get tired of football during the season? Because I mean, you just mentioned it, from Thursday through Sunday. I mean, you're immersed in football.
Yeah.
Obviously, you love it. I'm not naive.
Thank God, it never. Here I am, 29th year.
Yeah.
And it's like I've never been more invigorated to get going this year than my whole career. And
wow.
And I know, I'm not just saying that. That's just how I feel.
I don't know that I can say the same thing. But
I'm lucky.
Try.
I'm lucky. I think there's been enough changes, like Pat coming in and Coach Saban on game day, working with Al Michaels on Thursday night.
How about that? Because I know you're a big Cincinnati.
We talk about the Reds all the time.
Right.
He knows the area. We've done a Bengals game the last couple of years. We got Cleveland, Cincy this year.
Okay.
We got Indy August 22nd. We got a preseason game. I mean, think about it. I'm working with Al Michaels on Thursday. I'm doing game day with Saban and that crew. I'm calling Saturday night games that are just insane. So a lot of it has to do with I'm doing some fun things. Now, what I do get tired of is this, and I'm on social media enough to feel the wrath of fans.
Yeah.
And I think what hurts me
I was
is
gonna say, does that bother you?
Yeah, because I'm a pleaser. You know, I'm an Ohio guy. Like I'm not out to stir up trouble. I don't have an agenda. And you get accused of things that are hard to defend because they're not true, and they become a reality in this fantasy world. And that part of it takes any joy, maybe that if I ever get out of it, it'll be because it's not worth dealing with that. And, you know, you get death threats, you get all kinds of stuff,
which
like
is insane.
It's insane.
I mean, and it's funny. Back when I did talk radio, I remember a guy, and he was really good, the operations manager. He's like, you know, if I don't get complaints about you, you're not doing your job. And that was kind of, for me, I'm kind of like, you know, because I'm not innately really that. Now, over time, you kind of learn it is what it is.
Yeah.
Because
if you're having opinions,
correct, then some like it, some don't.
Yeah.
That's just
I mean, it's, you know, it's like, you know, locally, I'm a diehard Reds fan, but I am so pissed off with where they've been as an organization for the last 11 years. And if I say that, you're not a fan. It's like, no, I'm beyond a fan. Like I get excited when pitchers and catchers show up in February. Like I know the Reds better than anything in my life, and nothing would make me happier. They don't have to win it all, but I grew up in the 70s
so did I.
And it was just they were competitive.
Right.
Like
correct.
And I'm not just play hard and put a good roster out there and the city will get behind you, but it's just such a frustrating organization to follow. But the reason I'm sorry, I'm on a tangent, but if you get into that on local radio, you're going to really ruffle some feathers if you give your real opinion on that.
Yeah.
And but if you don't do that and you just stay in the middle, that's boring, right? So you got to have some opinions.
So here's my final question, high school question. We've seen all the changes at the college level. I'm nervous because, you know, it trickles down.
Yeah.
And it's in some states. I mean, the NIL is in, I mean, do you think it'll get, because the difference is, well, but here's the difference. At the college level, you're right. The coaches don't love that piece of it, but they're compensated to where if you make it to that level, you want to stay there for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
That's not the way it is at the high school level. And it worries me that a lot of really good coaches who coach what's been brought to them and coach them up, as they say.
Yeah.
It worries me that if the landscape of high school changes and it heads too far down that path, it's going to be interesting. High school, it makes me nervous about where it goes.
That's terrifying to even think of. I've never really thought about that.
I don't think we're that far, sadly. Because, I mean, you think about it, you mentioned earlier open enrollment at the high school level. And today you just go there because maybe you're on a team that's not winning and this team's better, you got a better chance to play. But what if you start to introduce into that the monetary aspect? Because I mean, we can be.
Are there rules on that right now?
Well, some states.
I think Texas with Quinn Ewers, remember that?
Correct. Yeah. There are certain states.
He left for his senior year because they wouldn't let him get money.
And there are certain states where there is NIL in place, and there are others that
well, I just think that's to say it's ridiculous. Again, you don't want to have your head in the sand because maybe it is going to happen. But the fact that you're already seeing college coaches that are saying, "I'm done with this. You know, I'm gonna." We had Boston College, Jeff Hafley. He left. He wasn't being fired. He left to go be the Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. Chip Kelly left. Yeah. He didn't get fired. He left UCLA because he don't want to deal with the headaches anymore. Yeah. And if high school coaches, especially in a state like this where these guys are grinders, man, they love it. They do it for the love of it. They're not getting rich off of this. Right. They love the challenge of what's the roster look like and where are we going, and we're going to be a running team this year. We got a great quarterback, whatever it is. And you take those guys away from impacting kids because of stupid NIL, that'd be a travesty. I'd hate to see that in the state.
So I know we're going to see you at least one Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown game.
Yeah.
At the Pit.
Yeah, I'll be there. I can't wait. I wish I could make that Moeller-Princeton game.
Yeah, that's going to be that's the opener, and that's just such a class. I mean, again, those two teams, when Princeton beat Massillon, Washington, hang on, Canton, I get them confused. They had a landmark semifinal victory. That was the one that put Cincinnati on the map. And that's just back in those days when you
do you know what ballpark year that was?
I believe it was 71.
Okay.
It was the first year. Well, I can tell you, it was the first year that the OHSA went to a real playoff.
Okay.
Now, the
before
playoff
yeah.
yes, was very different.
They just kind of nominated a team as like
before it was like you just
send it
over the champs.
yeah.
I mean, it was kind of like, and that's why people don't realize some of those. And I've heard Chris Spielman, and he spoke at Moeller one time, and he talked about how all these, but they were mythical.
Yeah.
You know, and that's all you had to go on.
Yeah.
But it's but yeah.
Man, I think about, it's funny you talk about that because I grew up, I talked about the 80s, like it was just on the back end of what Jerry Faust had done at Moeller. Yeah. So all I know is Ohio and Cincinnati. I always, even within the state, I always tell guys in Northeast Ohio, when I was at Ohio State, always talking about Southwest Ohio owns Northeast Ohio.
Oh, that was,
you know what I mean?
Debate.
That was
absolutely
a big thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it is.
It still is a little bit.
With it.
But we're trying. I know Pat Mancuso, who is 80. I want to say he's 88, 89. He's going to be at the Princeton Moeller game as the honorary. And I'm trying to see if I can get Jerry Faust.
That's awesome.
To come down because they're both close to 90.
You got to do that.
And that would just be unbelievable for those for what those two. You know, and you hope that some of the people playing today and the younger coaches understand.
Yeah.
Those guys, and if you don't, go look at some old videos.
Yeah.
Those teams were unbelievable.
Well,
the players and programs and
my first start at Centerville was against Princeton in 1986, and we played at Princeton, and Pat Mancuso was the coach. And I'm telling you, like we ended up beating them. We went for two late in the last minute and scored and won, but they were ranked number one preseason.
And I think that year Fairfield actually won.
Yeah, they did.
The state championship.
They did.
Yeah.
They sure did. But man, to watch those Princeton Moeller games in 7th grade, in 8th grade, in 9th grade, and now I'm on the field looking at this defense. They might have had 5 or 6 guys going D1.
I'm sure they did.
And you know, our school didn't have anybody at that time. We were just grinding out option football and to see him on the sideline, it was like seeing. It was just like seeing a legendary Hall of Fame coach. Well, you're going to see him, man. Please tell him I said hello and what a big fan I am.
Well, you'll get a kick out of this. So I do a bunch of little social media, little 1 to 2 minute hits, and we went literally to where the grass and the woods. That's now where Galbraith Field used to be.
Oh, wow.
And I did a little thing and said, you may not realize this, but like this was more, I mean, the College Football Hall of Fame used to be.
Yes.
This was Moeller's home field. And now it's just, which is kind of painstaking, I remember, because we had a showdown. We had a number of early.
There's so many massive games down there.
We had, I think it was, Mason play. It was Lebanon, Mason, Kings. They all played at there. It was unbelievable.
A great venue for high school football. You couldn't have a better place.
I'll leave you with this. I probably shouldn't tell this, but we're okay now. But it was. So I'll never forget this. It was Lebanon against Mason, and it was at Galbraith. And Galbraith wasn't. This was when nobody used it as its home. And in fact, if my memory serves me correct, they had some kind of equestrian horse show there. That's all they did up there at the time. And I'll never forget this. It was before the game. We were standing out with the guy who was running the place at the time, and he looked out, and there were people packing into the stands, and he goes, "Oh boy, I hope those stands hold." We haven't had this many people in here in a while. I'm thinking to myself, as the guy in charge of the event, I'm thinking, oh, you don't want to hear that. Hope these stands hold, right? But he wasn't kidding. He was, for the record, they did. They're not there anymore. Thank God.
My God!
People don't realize this. They held the Amos Alonzo Stag Bowl, the Division III national champ was there. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it was College Football Hall of Fame.
Okay. One last thing.
Yeah, you're good.
My biggest memory, or one of my great memories of that setting. I was a freshman. Freshmen didn't play at Centerville.
Okay.
Centerville in 1984 played Moeller in the rain, and Moeller was Moeller. I mean, they had Camp House, I think, was their quarterback.
Mark Camp House.
The receiver that went to the Waddle.
Tom Waddle. Who still does sports talk radio now in Chicago.
DeJuan Francisco. They were loaded.
Yeah.
And Centerville, if Vegas put a line on that game, it was 25, maybe 30. And it's pouring. I'm talking monsoon.
And it was obviously natural grass.
Natural grass. It was muddy as it could be. Centerville had some good players on that team, and they beat them 10-7. And when you're in Dayton's in the 80s, It was almost like they were second-class citizens.
I remember.
To Cincinnati.
Yeah, I remember.
And deservingly so. There's very rarely did a Dayton team go down to Cincinnati and beat them, whether it's regular season or in the playoffs. And that was like a monumental moment for not just Centerville, but for Dayton. And I can still see that game sitting there watching it.
You mentioned Dayton. Dayton's had some really good football.
Yeah.
And I remember Columbus has too.
Sure.
There was a
Columbus
time when Columbus.
They were just you won Region 4, and you're in the.
Well, it was Northeast versus Southwest.
Yeah.
Every single
year.
There
was a pit stop against Columbus on the way to.
Until it got to the Upper Arlingtons and the Pickerington Centrals.
Exactly.
And
they turned. Pick Central and Pick North and Dublin. Hilliard.
You know what's funny is we really could probably. It's a good thing that because we could. I know because you're like me, man.
I could.
And it's just because you just.
I love it.
This is what to me. I think what we've done here shows you why high school football and high school sports is still special.
Yeah.
Because these are memories that they don't go away.
Never.
I mean, they don't go away.
Never.
They're truly, and you still. And look at how excited you can get. You remember games.
God,
you remember plays.
I remember it. It never.
Through all these years of remembering.
No, and doing NFL and college, but I still go back to, being that impressionable young. And just the impact that it has on you for the rest of your life.
And you've kept your hair much better than I have. I know we're not that far. I know we're not that far away in age, but you still have hair. I don't. See, getting out of the events business.
You
have hair. Yeah, I don't have hair.
By the way, what kind of teams Cole Rain have this year? You guys going to be all right?
I don't know. It's a great question.
We'll scrimmage them in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Well, they didn't win a game last year.
Are you serious?
Oh, yeah, they were 0-10, and
I didn't realize that.
And it's been a
boy,
it's tough.
Are kids coming out?
Well, I think they'll be better, but I don't know.
Damn, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's and I think the barometer because St. X plays Lakota West. That's kind of become week one. And I'm not a fan, and I know why they do it, but the Greater Miami Conference and the Eastern Cincinnati Conference, they have the 9-game leagues.
Yeah, so you don't get many.
I mean, for me personally, and that's what made it, that's why our format now where we go to a campus, and I love going to the campus.
Yeah.
I love the Nipper, but the campuses are cool because they get excited and all that. But I liked creating the matchups. Now, I'm not going to lie, Kirk. There were some years where, because basically what the GCL teams used to do is they just leave their schedule open.
Yeah, wait for you to
trust me to get. And I can remember. I had Massillon, Washington was scheduled to play Elder, and they backed out. And I remember going, "Oh boy!" And we're talking like a couple months. And
my God, what do you do?
Some schools now use and I'm trying to think of the proper phraseology. They're like brokers.
Okay,
I mean, they'll call their national guys.
I didn't realize that.
Like St. John Bosco.
Yeah.
When they played St. Xavier at Nipper in the showdown, that was I literally somebody called me and said, "Hey, I got this team. They're looking for a game."
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's where because you got to think in the GCL South they have 3 league games.
I know.
7 non-league games.
I think Coach Speck struggles every year. It's a challenge every year.
They all do. 7 non-league games. I mean, and that's why they're regional. And there have been a lot of talks about like a league that would, St. Ed's and a St. I and a Louisville St. X and Louisville Trinity and some teams. And Indianapolis has great high school
Cathedral,
football too. Outstanding.
Yeah.
But I just think it'd be tougher than ever.
Yeah.
Logistically,
it would be.
Do it for football.
It's like bringing Oregon into the Big Ten. But without the same budget.
On that note, yes, I'm gonna have to get a little like sheet out from you to figure out who the hell's in what league.
I am too.
I mean,
we all are.
Yeah.
Well, it's fun talking, man.
It was. I appreciate your time, man.
You got it,
really
buddy.
do.
Yeah,
and we'll see you. Now, will I recognize you?
I'll be in a hat.
I know. Same hat. Do I need to tell Elder Herbstreit's coming? Let them know early, just so they're aware.
Yeah. Okay. I'll be coming in there if I can find a parking spot. It's a tough spot to find a parking spot if you're running late.
I might know somebody who can help.
Maybe you can help me with that. Yeah.
So, Kirk Herbstreit, Mr. Football Extraordinaire, enjoyed it. Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown again, presented by Mercy Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Meijer, year 27. Check out our social media starting Monday. See if I get my dates right here, August 19th. At X-Town Showdown on X. Is it really?
Yeah.
Formally, you can celebrate. So that'll be we have a Meijer Monday. That'll be it. We'd like to wish a special happy birthday, and I won't give you your age. How about that?
There you go.
You still got hair. You can get
I got a little hair left.
All right. It's all good.